My fiancé. Texted, I'm not in love with you anymore. Actually, I never really was. You're just safe and boring, but I deserve someone who actually excites me. I replied, thanks for the heads up. Then I called off the wedding, sold her dress, and left town. A week later, she was begging through my parents. Hey everyone! Before we jump into today's video, I need your help. We've noticed the channel is losing some traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can support us. It's quick, free, and it helps us keep bringing you awesome content. Your support means the world. Let's keep this channel growing together. Thanks so much. Now let's start the video. Throwaway account for obvious reasons. This happened over the past year, and I'm finally ready to tell the whole story. Fair warning, this is long as hell, but worth the read if you like justice being served. I, 32 male, been working construction project management for the past 8 years. Started swinging hammers right out of high school, worked my way up through community college and state school while doing concrete and framing on weekends. Now I manage commercial building projects and pull down about $89,000 a year. Not bad for a guy whose dad drove trucks and whose mom cleaned houses. I own my truck outright. Got about $35,000 in savings. Credit score around 780. Basically, I'm the kind of guy who learned early that money doesn't grow on trees, and every dollar matters. My parents divorced when I was 14 because dad couldn't stop gambling, so I've seen what financial irresponsibility does to families. That's important context for what comes next. Met Jessica about 2.5 years ago at my buddy's barbecue. She was 28, worked part-time at some upscale clothing boutique downtown, making maybe $23,000 a year. Gorgeous blonde, about 5 feet 6 inches, the kind of girl who knew exactly how pretty she was and had been using it to get what she wanted her whole life. First red flag should have been our third date. Took her to this nice steakhouse. Nothing crazy expensive, but not cheap either. She ordered the most expensive thing on the menu, $48 ribeye, plus appetizer, dessert, 2 specialty cocktails. When the check came, she just sat there scrolling her phone while I paid. I mean, she didn't even pretend to reach for her purse. Just assumed I'd cover it. When I handed my card to the server, she looked up and said, "Oh, good. I was starting to worry you were one of those guys who expects women to pay. Should have walked away right then." But she was hot and seemed really into me, so I ignored that voice in my head telling me something was off. The relationship moved fast. She was always wanting to go out to nice places, always had some event we needed to attend, always found reasons why I should pay for things. When I suggested cheaper alternatives, she'd get this wounded look and say stuff like, "I thought you wanted to spoil me," or "My ex never made me feel cheap like this." The ex comment was a regular manipulation tactic. Whenever I balked at spending money, she'd bring up how her previous boyfriend Marcus, some trust fund kid whose daddy owned car dealerships, never questioned what she wanted, how he understood that women like her were investments, and how real men don't nickel and dime their girlfriends. Looking back, I realized she was training me, teaching me that questioning her spending meant I didn't care about her, that being financially responsible meant I was cheap and unloving. Death by 1,000 tiny guilt trips. About 8 months in, she started hinting about moving in together. Her lease was up and she couldn't afford to renew solo. I had a decent 2-bedroom apartment in a good neighborhood, paying $1,400 a month. Seemed natural enough. That's when the real financial abuse started. She moved in but never contributed to rent because it was my place before she got there. Fair enough, I guess. But then she immediately started redecorating. Threw out my perfectly good couch because it was bachelor furniture. Bought a $3,200 sectional and acted like I was ungrateful when I mentioned the cost. "I'm making our home beautiful," she'd say. "Why don't you want us to have nice things?" Same pattern every time. She'd spend my money, then make me feel guilty for caring about it. The furniture, new curtains, expensive candles, premium bedding, kitchen gadgets we never used. Always something we needed for our home that somehow always came out of my checking account. I was too stupid to see it then, but she was systematically conditioning me to hand over money without question, preparing me for the big score. After about 18 months, Jessica started dropping heavy hints about marriage. Would point out engagement rings in jewelry store windows, send me links to wedding Pinterest boards, get teary-eyed at other people's weddings about how someday she hoped to find that kind of love. The manipulation was surgical. She never directly pressured me, just created this constant background radiation of expectation. Made me feel like proposing was my idea, when really she'd been steering me toward it for months. When I finally decided to propose, she had very specific ideas about the ring. Dragged me to this high-end jewelry store downtown and pointed out exactly what she wanted. 2-carat princess cut diamond, platinum setting, from this designer collection that started at $8,000. I know it's expensive, she said, gripping my arm, but this is once in a lifetime. I want something I'll be proud to show people. Proud to show people. Not proud to wear because she loved me, but proud to show off. Should have been a massive red flag, but I was already committed mentally. Dropped $8,500 on that ring and proposed on her birthday. Her reaction was weird. She said yes, but the first thing she did was take a photo of the ring and post it on Instagram. Didn't even kiss me until after she'd tagged all her friends and written this long caption about dreams coming true. That night, she called her mom, Patricia, to share the news. I could hear Patricia's voice through the phone. Oh, honey, how big is the stone? What's the setting like? Did he go to a good jeweler? Not, are you happy, or is he a good man? Just questions about the ring's specs and value. Wedding planning started immediately, and that's when Jessica's true nature came out. Nothing was ever good enough, ever cheap enough, ever simple enough. Every decision was an opportunity to spend more of my money, while she contributed exactly nothing. I suggested having the ceremony at my uncle's farm. Beautiful property, would cost us maybe $2,000 to rent tents and decorations. Jessica acted like I'd suggested holding it in a gas station bathroom. I'm not getting married in some field like a hillbilly, she said. What would people think? Found a suitable venue for $16,500. Just for the space rental, not including anything else. Same story with every vendor. The photographer I found for $1,800? His portfolio looks so amateur. Had to book someone for $4,200. The florist who quoted $600 for centerpieces? Those flowers look like something from a grocery store. Now we're at $1,300. Every conversation followed the same pattern. I'd suggest something reasonable. She'd act horrified. Then present a much more expensive alternative that we absolutely had to have for our special day. When I tried to discuss budget, she'd get emotional. This is the most important day of my life, and you want to ruin it by being cheap. I thought you loved me. I thought you wanted me to be happy. How do you argue with that? How do you tell the woman you love that her happiness isn't worth going into debt? She'd made it so that any resistance to spending was proof I didn't love her enough. Meanwhile, she'd quit her boutique job in February because wedding planning was basically a full-time job, and she needed to focus on getting everything perfect. Translation: she was now living off me completely while spending my money like it was Monopoly cash. By August, we'd burned through $47,000 of my savings. I'd had to borrow $9,000 against my 401k just to keep up with her demands. My bank account went from healthy to scary in 8 months. But the wedding was still 2 months away, and Jessica kept finding new things we absolutely needed. Upgraded linens for an extra $800. Special lighting package for $1,200. Premium bar service for $2,400 more. I started having panic attacks thinking about money. Would wake up at 3 a.m., calculating whether I could afford groceries after paying the latest vendor invoice. Jessica would find me stressed about finances and somehow make it about how I was ruining the engagement period with my negativity. Looking back, I realized she was systematically destroying my financial stability while positioning herself as the victim of my selfishness. Classic abuser playbook. The Tuesday it all came crashing down. I'd just gotten home from a brutal day managing a commercial roofing project. Crew had screwed up measurements, we were behind schedule, client was threatening penalties. I was exhausted, stressed about work and money, wondering how the hell I was going to pay for this wedding without declaring bankruptcy. I was sitting on my couch, still in my work clothes, trying to figure out if I could sell my truck to cover the remaining vendor payments. That's when Jessica's text came through. I'm not in love with you anymore. I think we want different things in life. Just like that. No warning, no conversation, no explanation. 2.5 years and $56,750 later, she ended our relationship with a text message. I stared at that phone for probably 20 minutes. Read the message over and over, trying to make it say something different. Kept thinking maybe she was having a bad day. Maybe she'd sent it by mistake. Maybe this was some kind of test. But deep down, I knew. She'd gotten everything she could out of me, and now she was moving on to the next mark. You know what I texted back? Thanks for letting me know. Then I put my phone down and started planning her destruction. Couldn't sleep that night, so I made coffee and got to work. Opened my laptop and created a spreadsheet called Operation Clean Slate. Listed every single expense related to Jessica and our wedding, every vendor contract, every deposit, every shared financial obligation. The numbers were devastating. Wedding vendors, Venue deposit, $16,500. Non-refundable per contract. Catering, $3,800 deposit. Photography, $4,200 deposit. Flowers, $1,300 deposit. Band, $2,900 deposit. Cake, $650 deposit. Linens and decor, $1,200 deposit. Living expenses, 8 months unemployed. Her share of groceries, approximately $2,400. Her car insurance, $1,200. I'd been paying it. Her phone bill, $720, added to my plan. Her credit card minimums, $800. She'd asked for temporary help. Clothes and personal items, approximately $2,800. Entertainment and dining, approximately $3,600. Total financial damage, $56,750. Every penny of it my money. Every single freaking dollar. But seeing it all laid out like that, I noticed patterns. How she'd always found ways to make every expense seem necessary and urgent. How she'd weaponized emotions to shut down any discussion of cost. How she'd systematically trained me to hand over money without question. This wasn't love. This was a con job. I spent the rest of the night researching my options. Called vendors starting at 8 a.m. to understand my financial exposure. Most were sympathetic but firm about their contracts. Deposits were non-refundable regardless of circumstances. The venue was the biggest loss. Manager was polite but clear. I understand this is difficult, but we have it in writing. The $16,500 deposit is forfeit if you cancel within 90 days. Photographer was actually hostile about it. His email response was basically, not my problem. Contract is binding. Don't contact me again. Real piece of work. Caterer was more understanding. Older gentleman who'd been in business for decades, probably seen this before. He refunded $1,200 of the $3,800 deposit as a goodwill gesture. Small mercy. After calling everyone, I'd recovered about $2,100 out of $56,750. The rest was just gone. Money I'd worked my ass off for, saved penny by penny, vanished because I'd trusted the wrong person. That afternoon, Jessica came home acting like nothing had happened, walked right past me and started making herself lunch, humming some song like she didn't have a care in the world. So about last night's text, I said. Oh, that. She didn't even look up from her sandwich. Yeah, I've been thinking a lot lately, and I realized we're just not compatible long term. You're very practical, and I need someone who shares my vision for what life should be like. Your vision being what exactly? Success, nice things, actually enjoying life instead of obsessing over every little expense. She said it like I was some kind of miser for not wanting to spend myself into bankruptcy for one party. I see. Well, since we're not compatible, you'll need to move out. That got her attention. She actually laughed. I'm not going anywhere. We can be adults about this and continue living together as roommates until the lease is up. Lots of broken up couples do that. The absolute audacity. She just dumped me after bleeding me dry, and now she wanted to keep living in my apartment rent-free like nothing had changed. No, Jessica. You ended our relationship. You don't get to keep living here. Well, where am I supposed to go? I don't have money for a deposit right now, and finding a decent place takes time. Maybe ask those wealthy parents who raised you to think money just appears out of thin air. Her face went ugly real quick. You're being a vindictive asshole. This is exactly why I fell out of love with you. You're mean and petty when things don't go your way. I looked at this woman who'd spent 2 years systematically draining my bank account, who just discarded me via text message, who was now demanding to continue living off me while calling me the problem. Something cold and calculating settled in my chest. You have until Friday to get your stuff out, I said. After that, anything left here goes to storage, and you can figure out how to retrieve it. Jessica spent Wednesday and Thursday alternating between ignoring me completely and having dramatic emotional breakdowns about how heartless I was being. She'd camp out in the bedroom making phone calls to friends and family, sobbing loudly enough for me to hear through the door. Thursday evening, she came home with reinforcements, her mother Patricia and sister Brittany. Patricia was everything I'd expected from Jessica's stories. Mid-50s woman who'd clearly been stunning in her youth and still carried herself like she was 25. Drove a BMW X5 her husband Robert paid for. Wore designer everything. Perfectly manicured nails that had never seen a day of real work. Looking at her was like seeing Jessica's future. Entitled, demanding, and completely useless. Michael, sweetie. Patricia started in this fake concerned voice. Jessica told me you two are having some relationship difficulties. But throwing her out of her home? That seems a bit extreme. It's not her home, I said. It's my apartment. My lease, my security deposit, my rent payments. Well, yes, technically, but you've been living together for over a year. She has rights. Brittany jumped in. Yeah, you can't just make someone homeless because you had a fight. We didn't have a fight. She ended our relationship via text message after spending $56,750 of my money. Patricia's eyes widened slightly at the number, but she recovered quickly. Well, wedding expenses are just part of getting married. That's what engagement periods are for. Except we're not getting married. She called it off. So what exactly was all that money for? Look, Patricia said, switching tactics. Jessica made a mistake. She's young and got overwhelmed by wedding planning. But you can't just abandon her in her time of need. What kind of man does that? The what kind of man line? Jessica had trained them well. The kind who doesn't let people walk all over him, I said. She's had 2 days to figure something out. She's got wealthy parents, she'll manage. Patricia's mask slipped a little. Well, we can't just... our guest room is being renovated right now, and... Of course it was. They had money for luxury cars and designer handbags, but couldn't help their own daughter when she actually needed it. Probably because they knew exactly what kind of person she was, and didn't want to deal with the consequences of her choices. That sounds like a family problem, I said. Not my problem. Brittany got nasty then. You're such an asshole. Jessica loved you, and you're throwing it all away because of money. She's better off without you. If she's better off without me, then she shouldn't mind finding somewhere else to live. Friday morning came and went. Jessica's stuff was still there. So at noon, I called a moving company and had them pack everything up, paid for professional packing and 1 month of storage, then mailed the key to Patricia's house via certified mail. The call started within an hour. Jessica sobbing about how cruel I was being. Patricia threatening legal action. Even got a voicemail from Robert saying I was handling this like a child and needed to step up and be a man about it. Step up and be a man? I'd been stepping up for 2 years while his daughter bled me dry. Now I was supposed to keep supporting her after she discarded me? Blocked all their numbers and enjoyed the silence for the first time in months. Took the engagement ring to 4 different jewelers before finding one willing to give me $3,100 for it. Brutal loss, but I wanted it gone. Every time I looked at that ring, I thought about how excited Jessica had been to show it off. How it was never about loving me, but about having something expensive to display. The wedding dress was more complicated. Posted it online with detailed photos and honest description. Designer wedding dress, size 6, never worn. Selling due to canceled wedding. Original price $5,200. Asking $2,800 OBO. Got a lot of lowball offers and sob stories. One woman offered $800 and a long email about how she couldn't afford more but really loved the dress. Another wanted to trade for her grandmother's vintage dress that looked like it came from a thrift store. But I also got messages from women who'd been in similar situations. Brides whose fiancés had cheated, whose engagements had imploded for various reasons. There was this whole underground network of women selling wedding dresses they'd never get to wear. Made me realize Jessica wasn't unique. She was just another in a long line of people who treat relationships like business transactions. Eventually found a buyer willing to pay $2,400 cash. Every dollar recovered felt like a small victory against Jessica's financial warfare. During this time, I started noticing Jessica's social media activity. She'd always been addicted to Instagram and Facebook, constantly posting about her fabulous life. But now the post had a different tone. Lots of vague posting about toxic people and fake friends, and starting fresh. Photos of her out at expensive restaurants and bars with friends, like she was celebrating being free of me. Designer handbags I'd never seen before, new clothes, professional salon visits. Wait, if she was so broke that she couldn't afford an apartment deposit, where was money for all this shit coming from? I started digging deeper. Jessica had always been careless about privacy settings. Her Instagram was public. Her Facebook posts were visible to friends of friends, and she tagged locations constantly. That's when I discovered something interesting. She was spending a lot of time at this upscale cocktail bar downtown, posting photos with different guys, always looking cozy and intimate. One guy in particular kept showing up. Tall, well-dressed, driving a Mercedes convertible. His Instagram was public too. Marcus Hamilton, 34, worked in pharmaceutical sales, lived in a downtown condo that probably cost twice what I made in a year. Recent posts showed him with Jessica at expensive restaurants, weekend trips to wine country, shopping excursions to high-end boutiques. The timeline was interesting. Their first photo together was dated 2 weeks before Jessica dumped me. But looking closer at when they started following each other, it was almost 6 weeks before that. Jessica hadn't fallen out of love with me. She'd found a bigger fish and was preparing to jump ship. The breakup text wasn't emotional. It was business. She'd been planning her exit strategy while bleeding me dry for wedding expenses. I screenshotted everything. Every photo, every tagged location, every timestamp. Building a file of evidence that Jessica's financial desperation was bullshit. That she'd been lining up her next mark while still engaged to me. Figured I was done with her games. I was wrong. 2 weeks after Jessica moved out, I got a call from my landlord, Mr. Kim. Michael, I need to talk to you about your apartment. Building manager got noise complaints from neighbors. Loud music. People coming and going at all hours. What's going on over there? My blood went cold. What do you mean? I haven't been having any parties. Not you. Your girlfriend. She's still living there with her friends? My girlfriend moved out 2 weeks ago. I live there alone now. Long pause. That's not what building manager was told. She said you just working different shifts now. Still live there together with some relatives visiting. I drove over to my apartment immediately. Used my key to get in and found Jessica's cousin Tyler crashed on my couch, along with his girlfriend Madison and some other kid I'd never seen before. They had fast food containers everywhere. My TV was on showing some streaming service I didn't pay for, and they were treating the place like their personal clubhouse. What the freak is this? I said. Tyler barely looked up from his phone. Oh, hey, man. Jess said you moved out, and we could crash here for a few weeks while I look for work. I didn't move out, I live here. Jessica doesn't live here anymore because she broke up with me. Nah, man. She said you guys just had a fight, but you're cool with us staying here temporarily. She gave us her key. She doesn't have a key anymore. I changed the locks. That got their attention. Madison sat up from where she'd been sprawled on my couch. Wait, so we're not supposed to be here? No, you're not supposed to be here. Everyone out. Right now. Tyler stood up then, trying to look intimidating despite being about 140 pounds soaking wet. Look, dude, I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but Jessica told us you were cool with this. We've been here 2 weeks now, so we have residency rights. The way he said residency rights, like he'd looked it up, like he knew exactly what he was doing. You don't have any rights? You're trespassing. Get out before I call the police. Go ahead, Tyler smirked. I've been getting mail here for 2 weeks. Cops can't do anything without an eviction notice. And that's when I realized this wasn't some casual mistake. Jessica hadn't just told them they could crash at my place. She'd coached Tyler on squatters' rights laws. This was another calculated scam. Fine, I said. You want to play games? Let's play games. Time to go nuclear. Called my lawyer, Gary Morrison, first thing Monday morning. Gary had helped me with some contract disputes on construction projects. Sharp guy who didn't mess around. Let me get this straight, Gary said after I explained the situation. Your ex-fiancée moved her cousin into your apartment without permission, and now they're claiming squatters' rights? That's the situation. And you have documentation proving she moved out voluntarily? I forwarded him screenshots of Jessica's breakup text, photos of the moving company receipts, copies of the storage unit rental agreement, and all her social media posts about starting fresh and toxic relationships. Plus, I've got evidence she's been planning this for a while, I said, sending him the Instagram photos of Jessica with Marcus dated from before our breakup. Gary was quiet for a long moment. This is incredible. The premeditation here is something else. She lined up a new guy, bled you dry for wedding expenses, then set up a housing scam using her cousin as the front man. Can we get them out? Oh, we can do much better than that. File for unlawful detainer against the cousin, but also, did she cost you money through fraud or deception during the relationship? I thought about it. She quit her job during wedding planning, and I supported her for 8 months. Said it was temporary until after the honeymoon, but she broke up with me before the wedding. So she obtained financial support under false pretenses. That's conversion. We can go after her for reimbursement. I calculated 8 months of supporting Jessica. Groceries, utilities, her car insurance, phone bill, credit card payments, entertainment, shopping trips, everything. Came to about $11,520. File for that too, I said. But Gary wasn't done digging. He had one of his investigators look into Tyler's background and found gold. Kid had pulled this exact scam before. 2 different apartments, 2 different relatives. Same strategy of claiming residency rights to avoid paying rent. There was actually a paper trail of Tyler getting evicted from previous places for the same shit. Plus, he'd been bragging about it on social media, posting about gaming the system, and free rent for months. That made him a professional squatter in legal terms, which carried much heavier penalties and faster eviction timelines. We filed everything simultaneously: unlawful detainer against Tyler, conversion and fraud charges against Jessica, and restraining orders against both of them to stay away from my property. Process server found Tyler at my apartment 2 days later. Kid answered the door because he thought it was food delivery. Served him right there in my living room while he was eating cereal from my bowls. Jessica got served at her new job. She'd managed to find work at another boutique, probably because she needed money to keep up appearances with Marcus. Process server walked right into the store during business hours and handed her papers in front of customers and coworkers. According to the server, her face went white as a sheet when she realized what was happening. Court date was set for 5 months out, which gave me time to watch Jessica's carefully constructed life fall apart in real time. First casualty was her job. Apparently, having legal papers served at work didn't impress her new boss. She got fired within a week, probably because they Googled her name and found out about the fraud charges. Her social media presence became increasingly desperate. Posts about unfair treatment and being persecuted for trying to help family. Long rants about toxic men who can't handle strong women, and people who use money to control others. The comments on these posts were illuminating. Some friends offered support, but others started asking pointed questions. Wait, didn't you break up with him? And why was your cousin living in his apartment? And, girl, this sounds like drama you created. Patricia started commenting on Jessica's posts with passive-aggressive shit like, some people need to take responsibility for their choices, and actions have consequences, sweetheart. Even her own mother was distancing herself publicly. Tyler's situation was worse. Kid had no backup plan and no money. Started a GoFundMe asking for help with legal fees to fight unjust eviction. Raised $127 total, mostly $5 and $10 donations from friends. Meanwhile, Gary was building our case methodically. Subpoenaed Jessica's bank statements, social media data, got building management to document every policy violation Tyler had committed. But the real breakthrough came when Tyler, trying to defend himself, voluntarily provided text message screenshots to show he was just helping family. Those screenshots included his conversations with Jessica, planning the whole scam. Messages dating back to when she first started considering breaking up with me, planning how he could move in afterward. Stuff like, once I'm done with him, you can crash there for a couple months, and he's too much of a pushover to actually evict you, and just claim residency, it takes forever to get people out legally. She'd been planning this con for weeks. Found Marcus, planned her exit, set up Tyler to steal my housing, all while still taking my money for wedding expenses she knew we'd never use. The evidence was overwhelming. Jessica wasn't some heartbroken girl making emotional decisions. She was a calculated predator who'd orchestrated everything. 2 months before court, Jessica tried reaching out through mutual friends. Had her friend Amy call me asking if we could work something out without lawyers? Translation: she was freaked and knew it. Tell Jessica that ship sailed when she decided to commit fraud, I told Amy. We're going to court. Amy tried guilt-tripping me about ruining Jessica's life over money, but I shut that down quick. Jessica ruined her own life when she chose to be a criminal. I'm just making sure there are consequences. Court day arrived, and it was everything I'd hoped for, and more. Tyler showed up looking like he'd slept in his clothes for a week. Jessica came with Patricia and Robert, all dressed up like they were going to church. Trying to look respectable and sympathetic, I guess. The judge was the Honorable Martha Richardson, a no-nonsense woman in her 60s who'd probably seen every scam in the book. She listened to Tyler's bullshit sob story about just needing help, and Jessica's lawyer's claims about misunderstandings and emotional distress. Then Gary presented our evidence. Started with the timeline, Jessica moving out voluntarily, Tyler moving in immediately after, the coordination between them. Showed the judge screenshots of Jessica's social media posts about being done with toxic relationships, while simultaneously coaching Tyler on squatters' rights. Judge Richardson's expression got colder with each piece of evidence. When Gary presented the text messages showing Jessica planning the scam weeks in advance, she actually leaned forward in her chair. So to be clear, Judge Richardson said, looking directly at Jessica, you ended your engagement with the plaintiff, moved out of his apartment, then immediately facilitated your cousin's illegal occupancy of that same apartment? Jessica's lawyer tried some weak deflection about family helping family and miscommunication between parties. But the evidence was too solid. Tyler got hit first. Immediate eviction with 24-hour notice, plus a $3,200 fine for being a repeat offender and professional squatter. If he wasn't out by the deadline, it would become a criminal trespassing charge. But Jessica got the real punishment. Judge found her guilty of conversion, fraud, and conspiracy. Ordered her to pay back the $11,520 in living expenses she'd obtained under false pretenses, plus my legal fees, court costs, and punitive damages for the emotional distress and financial harm she'd caused. Total judgment, $21,800. But here's the beautiful part. Since Jessica was unemployed with no significant assets, the court set up a wage garnishment that would take 15% of any future income until the debt was paid, meaning she literally couldn't get a job without me getting paid first. At her current earning potential, it would take her about 5.5 years to pay off the judgment. 5.5 years of being reminded every payday that trying to scam me was the worst decision she'd ever made. Outside the courthouse, the family meltdown was spectacular. Patricia was screaming at Jessica about bringing shame on the family name, while Robert stood there looking like he wanted to disappear into the sidewalk. Tyler was on his phone begging various friends for couch space. Jessica just stood there crying, finally understanding that actions have consequences. She tried approaching me one last time as I was walking to my truck. "Michael, please, can't we work something out? I made mistakes, but I'm trying to get my life back together. This judgment is going to follow me for years." I looked at this woman who'd spent months planning to defraud me, who'd taken advantage of my trust and generosity, who'd tried to steal my home after bleeding me dry. You wanted different things in life, remember? Well, this is what different things look like. Enjoy your new reality. Last I heard through mutual friends, Tyler was back living with his mom, and Jessica was working at a call center making $14 an hour. About $125 of her paycheck comes to me every month until that $21,800 is paid off. Will probably take her about 5 years at that rate, assuming she can keep a job. Best $56,750 education I ever got. Taught me exactly what kind of person to avoid, exactly how manipulation works, and exactly how far I'm willing to go when someone tries to play me for a fool. Currently dating a woman who insisted on splitting dinner costs on our first date and has her own healthy savings account. Amazing how attractive financial responsibility becomes once you've dealt with the alternative. Some people think I went too far with the legal action, but I disagree. Jessica made calculated choices designed to exploit and manipulate me. She planned everything carefully, executed it systematically, and showed zero remorse when confronted. She just found out that some people fight back harder than she bargained for, play stupid games, win stupid prizes. And Jessica won the grand prize. 5 years of financial consequences for a few months of thinking she was smarter than everyone else. Sometimes the best revenge really is just letting someone face the natural consequences of their own choices. I didn't destroy Jessica's life. She did that herself. I just made sure she couldn't escape the results. And honestly, watching her learn that lesson has been worth every penny.